A $9 million apartment is not supposed to lose value quietly. It is supposed to lose value the way every luxury asset loses value, visibly on the market, where the seller and the buyer and everyone watching can see the number drop in real time. That is the entire premise of high-end real estate. You pay a premium for transparency, for documentation, for the certainty that comes from owning something with a paper trail. So when a satellite passing 700 kilometers above Miami Beach in December of 2024 measured one of the most expensive residential towers in Florida slowly settling into the sand it was built on, the story that came out of it was not really an engineering story. It was a real estate story, because the building had dropped roughly 3 inches over 7 years, because nobody inside knew, because the people who paid up to $9 million for an apartment had been told in the marketing, in the offering plan, in the sales pitch, that they were buying the most secure address money could buy. And the satellites had just made all of that quietly, mathematically untrue. This is document number 6. The Porsche Design Tower file is open. To understand the real estate problem here, you have to understand what was sold and to whom. Sunny Isles. Beach is not really land, it is a barrier island, a thin strip of sand piled up by the ocean off the Florida coast, only a few feet above sea level. For most of the 20th century, it held a strip of motels. Then a father and son team of developers, Michael and Gil Deezer, quietly bought up roughly 27 acres of that coastline and decided to build something the high-end residential market had never seen. Gil Deezer's idea was both simple and audacious. He would put the name of a luxury automotive brand on a skyscraper and turn the building itself into a status symbol that doubled as an investment vehicle. He licensed the Porsche brand, brought in Seeger Suarez architects to design the building, and in January of 2017, opened what was marketed as the first automobile-branded residential tower on Earth. The signature amenity was a patented invention he named immodestly after himself, the Deservator. You drive your car into a glass elevator at street level, and the elevator carries you and the car upward at hundreds of feet per minute. And in less than a minute, you arrive at the top, and the elevator opens directly beside your apartment, where your car parks. In a sky garage you can see from your bed. The building was designed with 284 parking spaces for 132 residences. The marketing was a single sentence that did most of the work. Sleep with your sports car. The financial result was exactly what the developers wanted. The tower attracted a buyer profile most luxury real estate sponsors only dream about. Lionel Messi reportedly paid $5 million for a unit. Colorado Rockies star Carlos Gonzalez bought one. Mexican telecom billionaire Carlos Peralta Quintero bought one. The rapper Birdman rented in the building. Sale prices climbed from $5 million into the 20s. Monthly building fees for the residents at the very top ran as high as $12,000. A significant number of the units were purchased through anonymous corporate shells, the foreign investor structure that has come to define the Miami-branded residence market over the last decade. The building was not just a place to live, it was a place to park global wealth, with the unusual benefit of being able to also park a McLaren next to your bed. What it sat on, though, was sand, not bedrock. And here is what sand does under a skyscraper. Miami is not built on solid stone. Underneath the streets is a layer cake of porous limestone shot through with bands of loose quartz sand. Sand carried down from the Appalachian Mountains by ancient currents over millions of years. The geological description that always lands hardest is this one. It is the equivalent of a sponge resting on a beach. When you place something as heavy as a 60-story tower on top of that, 2 things start happening immediately. The weight presses down, the vibration of years of construction, pile drivers, and neighboring towers shakes the ground. And loose sand grains, every time, respond the same way. They slowly rearrange themselves into a tighter pack. Engineers call it creep, or load-induced compression. The building does not drop suddenly, it sinks the way a heavy book sinks into a sandbox, imperceptibly, a hair at a time, every time someone taps the table. On rock, the book would eventually stop. On sand, it never fully does. Before I walk you through what the satellites actually measured, I want to ask you something. Because this is genuinely a real estate question, not just an engineering one. If you owned a $9 million apartment in a building that had sunk 3 inches over 7 years, and the engineers said it was structurally safe, and the city said it was structurally safe, but no monitoring program was in place to track what happens next, would you keep your money in it, or would you list? Tell me your answer in the comments now. Tell me what price you would list it at, and then tell me again at the end and see if your number moved. I read everyone, and on a question like this, what the comment section says is often more interesting than what the experts say. In December of 2024, a team of geophysicists at the University of Miami's Rosenstiel School proved what the developers, the residents, and the brokers had not known was happening. Led by Farzaneh Aziz Zanjani as the lead author and Falk Amelung as the senior author, the team pulled 222 satellite radar images covering the period from 2016 through 2023, using data from the German space agency's TerraSAR-X satellite. The technique they used, called interferometric synthetic aperture radar, can measure ground movement down to fractions of a millimeter. And when they ran the analysis along a 12-mile stretch of South Florida coastline, what they found was not one sinking building. It was 35 of them, strung along the barrier islands, quietly settling between roughly 0.8 inches and 3 inches over the 7-year period. In parts of Sunny Isles, almost 70% of the coastal high-rises showed measurable subsidence. And at the very top of the list, sinking faster than any of its neighbors, was the Porsche design tower. The most photographed luxury tower on the beach was failing in a way that was completely invisible from the street. There were no cracks running down the facade. There was no visible tilt, no alarm, no evacuation, no dramatic moment that would have hit the front page of the Miami Herald. It took a satellite 700 kilometers overhead, measuring shifts thinner than a coin, to catch it. The researchers were careful, and I want you to hear exactly how careful, because the careless version of this story does real damage. They knew the question the world would ask the second their study came out. They knew everyone in South Florida would think about Champlain Towers South, the Surfside condominium that collapsed in 2021 and killed 98 people just a few miles down the same coastline. So they specifically checked their method against that case, and their finding, the one I want you to hold on to, is that the kind of settlement they were measuring is not what brought Champlain down. Settlement was not the cause of the Surfside collapse. The Porsche Tower study is not a prediction that this building is about to fall. I want to be completely clear about that, because the responsibility of a file like this is to draw the line very precisely between what is alarming and what is actually dangerous. What it is alarming is something quieter, and from a real estate underwriting standpoint, harder to dismiss. The worst part of the discovery is not that the building had sunk 3 inches. New towers are supposed to settle a little as they find their footing, and then stop. This one had kept sinking for 7 years after completion, long after it should have gone still. Falk Amelung said it plainly in his interview with the Miami Herald. In most high-rises, subsidence slows down over time. In some, it just keeps going at a steady rate, and that, he said, suggests it could last for an extended period. In other words, the building is still moving. It has not yet decided to stop. And that has consequences that show up not in the structure, but on the balance sheet, in building insurance premiums, in monthly assessment math, in the resale comparables that brokers use, and in the next round of mortgage underwriting on every unit. None of those numbers move when a wall cracks. They move when a study like this one gets indexed. If you have made it this far in the file, you already know what kind of channel this is, and you already know the question I am going to keep asking. What is missing from this story is the rescue. In San Francisco, when the Millennium Tower began sinking and leaning, engineers and the homeowners and the insurance and the parties to the litigation spent more than $120 million trying to stop it. In New York, When 432 Park Avenue began showing cracks, the condo board went to court for $165 million. In Miami, there is no rescue yet because there is no requirement to even look. In December of 2025, a Miami Herald investigation pulled engineering reports from towers up and down the coast and found two things that should bother anyone who owns one of these units. The buildings were sinking faster than anyone had expected, and no law required anyone to monitor settlement once a tower was finished. Not its effect on the building itself, not its effect on the neighbors next door. Owners were free to never measure, and most of them did not. The official response was reassurance. The city of Sunny Isles pointed to Florida's strict building code, which has been substantially rewritten since the Surfside collapse. The architect of the Porsche Tower stated he felt comfortable with the building's structural integrity. The county mayor said the building should pose no immediate risk. They may all be right. None of these towers is in immediate danger. None has cracked. None has been evacuated. The condo boards have not, so far, opened structural defect litigation against the developers. But the scientists who found the sinking kept pointing at a different concern, one with a dry technical name that hides what it actually does to a building's value. Differential settlement. It is not the tower going straight down that matters. A building can sink 3 inches evenly and still be perfectly fine, structurally and financially. It is one side going down faster than the other. The slow tilt that cracks, pipes inside the walls, splits the facade, pulls doors out of square, drives up the building's insurance premiums year after year, and quietly removes the qualified buyer pool from the resale market, like a table with one leg sinking into the floor. And the only honest answer to whether that is happening underneath the Porsche Tower, or any of the 34 other named towers on the list, is that nobody is measuring. The instruments that would catch it have not been installed, because the law does not require them to be. In February of 2026, when a new tower nearby was approved amid public outcry over the sinking study, the developers were finally required to monitor subsidence during construction and for 1 year after completion. It was, by most reporting on this issue, the first time anyone on this coastline had been made to watch the ground at all. One tower, 1 year, after 10 years of new construction on a barrier island that, by the satellite's own measurement, is moving. Let me put the second question to you here, because I think this one separates the people who have actually thought about real estate from the people who have only ever bought into the marketing. If a building is engineered correctly, sitting on a coastline that is going to keep moving regardless of who builds what, whose responsibility is it to monitor what happens after the certificate of occupancy is issued? The developer who sold the units and walked away? The condo board made up of busy people who are not engineers? The lender who holds the mortgages? The insurance underwriter who is going to pay the claims? The city that approved the original plans? Right now, the legal answer is that it is nobody's job. And I personally think that is the loudest part of this entire file, because the money that flows through these buildings, the sale prices, the mortgages, the insurance premiums, the monthly assessments, the property tax assessments, all of it is being calculated against information that nobody is required to keep up to date. The people living above all of this are precisely the people who were promised it could never happen to them. Lionel Messi owns a unit at Porsche Tower with the car elevator in the Sky Garage. Carlos Gonzalez owns one. Carlos Peralta Quintero owns one. The rest of the name list is the kind that shows up on global rich lists rather than mailboxes. Many bought through anonymous corporate shells, which is itself part of the story of what these towers really are. Investment vehicles for parking global wealth in U.S. real estate, with the side benefit of being able to also park a supercar inside the apartment. The monthly building fees alone, $12,000 at the top units, are higher than the median American household's monthly income. None of these owners is in danger tonight. No unit has failed. The harm, for now, is slower and stranger than that. It is the quiet erosion of the one thing this building was supposed to guarantee. You can buy the view, you can buy the deservator, You can buy a place engineered so completely that you never have to step outside. What you cannot buy, it turns out, is the ground. There is one detail I want to put near the close because it captures the entire posture Miami has adopted on this. When the University of Miami study came out, the scientist who helped announce it summarized the public message in a single sentence. He said they did not want to alarm anybody. They just wanted to put out the fact that yes, there is a bit of subsidence going on. The reassurance and the warning delivered in the same breath. I personally think that is exactly how a slow disaster sounds before anyone agrees that it is one. Nobody wants to be the person who said the building was sinking, so nobody quite does. And in the meantime, the resale comparables, the insurance underwriting, and the lender's loan-to-value math all keep running on numbers that no longer reflect the ground. I personally think there are two versions of the Porsche design tower, and both of them are true at the same time. In one version, this is a perfectly safe luxury building that settled a few inches the way buildings settle on a coast governed by one of the strictest building codes in the country. Nothing has cracked. Nobody is leaving. The engineers say it is fine, and they are probably right. In the other version, it is the fastest sinking tower on a barrier island of sand, in a city where the sea is projected to rise as fast as the buildings are going down. Where Sunny Isles is forecast to face roughly 100 days of coastal flooding a year within 2 decades, and where no one is required by law to watch either number. A glass tower full of billionaires and their cars, settling slowly into ground that was never solid, with the ocean climbing toward it from the other direction, and a real estate market priced as if neither of those facts existed. The tower was sold as a place you would never have to leave. A city in the sky where your car waits outside your bedroom and nothing ever moves. But the one thing nobody could sell and nobody can buy is the ground. It was never stone, it was always sand. And sand, given enough weight and enough time, does only one thing. Tonight, the lights are on in apartments worth millions. The supercars are parked up in the sky and 3 inches down, so slowly that nobody inside can feel it. The most secure address money could buy is still sinking. A glass monument to the oldest mistake in the history of building anything. The belief that you can set something heavy enough on sand to make it behave like rock. I asked you near the beginning whether you would keep your money in this building, knowing what the satellites caught, and at what price you would list it. Now, I want to know if your number moved. And here is the question I really want you to wrestle with. When no one is required to monitor a sinking coastline full of $9 million apartments, whose responsibility is it? The developer, the condo board, the lender, the insurer, the city? Tell me where you land. The next tower is already being built, and the ground underneath it is doing exactly what the ground underneath this one did.